This video is made possible by our loyal Patreon supporters. Visit patreon.com/Psychetruth.
Hi, this is Chandler Rose. Today I will be comparing Swedish techniques for massage alongside trigger point therapy. I'll be working with Banks, and we will explore the difference between these two types of techniques and also how they can work very well together. Let's get started. So as I start with any session, I just like to ground into the space. Taking a breath also is a good way to influence your client or partner to breathe. Really slowing down the breath here, making the exhale long and drawn out. Specifically when you're learning trigger point techniques, it's very important to make sure you cue breath. And that is because trigger point can feel very deep, which is why I'm excited to show you how Swedish can work very well with trigger point to help relax and warm the tissue. So I'm just gonna warm my hands a bit and touch in on her shoulders and feel the mobility and movement in her shoulders and neck. It's also important to note that her knees are elevated with a really nice, cushy, comfy bolster. You can also use a pillow. And if you don't have a massage table, this is okay on a yoga mat as well. You just want to make sure you find a comfortable seat. And I like to take note of the alignment of Banks, noticing the placement of her hands, noticing the placement of her shoulders. Also, taking note of the position of the jaw. You want to make sure the mouth and jaw is nice and relaxed when you're doing massage. And before I use any oil, I'm just gently placing one hand under the back, under her ribs. And you can just gently curl the fingers up towards the middle of the back, and you're just lateral to the spine, making sure you're not directly on the spine. You may feel a dense area. A lot of times this can be a rib that's slightly out of position. Sometimes people complain of knots in their back, and it's actually ribs that are slightly out of place. So I'm just taking my fingers and curling up towards her anterior ribs, placing my fingers like this under her back. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side just to assess the relationship of the shoulders. Trigger point is very interesting in the way that it's been researched a lot. Originally, the research was done by needling points. And to be a trigger point, there has to be a referral sensation. And referral is sort of a radiating feeling to a different part of the body. And sometimes that radiating feeling can be directly around the area. So my fingers again are just curled up just to the right of the spine on this right side, and I can feel that her ribs are a little tight. Banks is super fit and active, using her muscles a lot. She has nice, healthy hypertonicity. However, massage is a great partner for the activity that she's working with in her body. It gives her a chance to rest, for her muscles to recover. So now that I've just inched my way up the rib cage, I'm just gonna stop here at the traps before I start getting into a little more specific work. And you might notice the chin kind of pop up a bit, which is natural. It's pretty common in this position to have clients ask you for a pillow to elevate their head. If you or someone you're working on has space here with a neck kind of sitting in this position, it's a good indication that there's chronic tension. So with my pillow clients that really need something under their neck, sometimes I'll let them have a pillow for a few minutes, and then I will remove the pillow and use my hands to support their head and neck. And another really good way to introduce your work to your client is just by holding the occipital ridge. The occipital ridge is the bony protuberance on the back of the head. This is one that just feels super relaxing. To find this area, you're going to look at the hairline and feel for the ridge. And then just under this ridge, there are these amazing little stabilizer muscles that help hold the head on the spine. They work super hard all the time and we don't even notice them. I feel that this is a very universal technique. You can do this occipital ridge hold on just about anyone and they will feel relief. Having the weight of the head be supported. Our heads are pretty heavy on the spine, so it's a good way to offer some assistance. And then these little muscles can start to stretch. You may also get feedback on sensation when you're working with trigger point therapy. So, for instance, if you're working in the traps, the trapezius muscle, the upper trapezius is here on each side. Sometimes when you do a trigger point in this area, your client may mention, "Oh, that's so interesting. I feel that in my shoulder, or I feel that in my head, or I feel that in my hand." Sometimes it's completely random, like they feel it in their left toe from the opposite side of the body. So take note if the radiating sensation is traveling down the body or if it's going up to the head. A lot of times if you get a referral that's going to the head behind the eyes, it's due to tension in the neck. And a lot of times that can cause headaches. So after releasing the occiput a bit, I'm just holding the neck and taking my fingers on one side and squeezing in towards the spine. And I'm just assessing how her vertebrae is feeling. Is there space? Is there movement? Do I feel some stuck tension there? On the opposite side of her neck, I have my thumb placed like this, pushing in. So I'm cradling and kind of squeezing. You want to be careful of the spine, especially if you're new to practicing massage. Some people are very resistant to neck work, but it isn't because they don't need it. Massage, for the most part, is very safe. Chiropractic is a little more sensitive in the body. Doing any quick adjustments can really bring up nerve stuff. So with massage, if you have someone that's resistant to neck work, I would encourage them to do self-massage, which we actually have some great videos for that as well. Usually if someone is tender and resistant to having neck work, it's really because they need it. So try to stay open in your own practice and also encourage people to at least work on themselves with the neck. So up until now, I haven't applied any oil. I've just been assessing the tissue. I haven't really done any trigger point other than she might feel a little sensation here and there from the holding that I was doing. But now she's a bit more warmed up, so I'm going to show you some Swedish techniques to compare, and then we'll get into some deeper trigger point work. I'm using my organic handmade hemp oils, which will also assist to further soften, loosen, relax the adipose tissue, which is the tissue above or around the deeper muscle tissue. Swedish is a type of massage over time that has been used a lot all over the world as a way to enhance relaxation, also improve sleep. It's probably the most common type of massage that you can go out and seek. It's also the most gentle in its application. Swedish is always moving, where if you compare to trigger point is not a moving massage. So it's holding a point for 10 to 20 to 30 seconds, allowing that point to release and then moving on. I love putting these two modalities together because Swedish allows the body to completely relax. The brain isn't so focused on what I'm doing, which can allow for more of a meditation type place for the mind while receiving. Whereas trigger point, oftentimes I find people are very focused on the work because it can be intense. So with Swedish, there's very little participation from the client. They're receiving this modality. And with trigger point, there is participation because you want to know what the referral sensation is. And you also want to make sure your client is breathing during a trigger point session. You want each trigger point to be associated with a big breath in and a very slow exhale out. So I'm moving from this sweeping technique that opens up the chest, rib cage, shoulders, trapezius. With Swedish, you have these really relaxing sweeping techniques, and as I scoop under her upper traps, I'll move into another Swedish technique called petrissage. It's the second technique you're going to learn if you study massage in school. And petrissage is like kneading bread, or kneading slime, or kneading any sort of malleable clay, anything that you can think of where you're being gentle to keep your hands in contact, but you're also thinking about the structures under the skin, the deeper structures. So as much as Swedish effleurage is more surface level, it's about spreading oil, it's about making contact, it's about creating a sense of comfort and safety. Petrissage goes a little deeper, which is really helpful when you're moving into trigger point, because you have this sweeping technique, which is a stretch of the skin. And then you have the petrissage, that is this kneading of any malleable structure, loosening, softening. And then I'm going to just take my fingers in up towards the spine. You're going to see her neck come up, or her chin come up. And then move into that holding of the occiput again. Another great way to contrast in your massage, if you find that trigger point really tenses someone up, you can move into effleurage or Swedish to zen them back out again, send them back into dreamland. And trigger point may bring them back, which is why it's really fun to do a combination. It makes trigger point a lot more comfortable and accessible when the tissue is nice and warm. So even though it doesn't look like I'm doing a lot here, I'm cradling the occiput. I'm putting pressure into these little teardrop shaped muscles that line up on the back of the skull. And these little muscles can let go for more flexibility in the back of the head. We get so focused on the thinking and doing part of our brain. What needs to be done? What haven't we done? What could we have done differently? So these points will allow you or your client to connect with other parts of the head that are involved in processing. The back of the head has a relationship with memory and muscles, and injuries have a relationship with memory and how the body stores information in these muscles. Effleurage is like painting a canvas, gliding over a surface. Petrissage is moving into the denser tissues, moving the blood, chasing away chronic tension. And trigger point, I'm going to start with our first official trigger point of this video by showing you a technique called pincer palpation. Not everyone loves this technique. It's not super comfortable, but it's very effective when it comes to back pain and neck pain and headaches. So scooping under for pincer palpation. I have the fingers under the back of the upper trapezius, taking my thumb and squeezing in to the top of this scroll-like muscle, the upper trapezius fibers, and gently pulling out. And when you find these little dense nodules in the muscle, or just, I mean, she has some really healthy tissue, so it's easy for me to work with it. You're also going to find people that have very dense tissue, and maybe you can't even squeeze that much, and you're dealing with something more like this dense. So figure out where the density is, and take your thumb and squeeze in. This is a really amazing technique for someone that has headaches. It can even cause the sensation of a headache. You can communicate about that Is my pressure too much for you? And so at this point, when you have this trigger point in the upper trapezius, for trigger point therapy, we want an initiated breath here. An inhale through the nose, and an exhale slowly through the nose or mouth or both. And the exhale, I've learned over time that if my client is open to thinking about the sensation and letting go of that feeling alongside that exhale, there is a relationship of letting go of that held tension in the tissue. Breathing is important with trigger point. So after a little bit of that, you can follow along the ridge and do as many trigger points as you like. I would stop at maybe 5 and then work into Psychetruth again. Zenning your client out after some deeper therapy is very helpful, and it makes their session more pleasurable. And a lot of times when I release one side, she's very loosened up on this side. I notice tension coming up on the other side, which is the natural pecking order of resistance or pain or tension in the body, to loosen one and then have the other side really want the same sort of therapy. So on the other side, I notice you have these muscles on either side called the scalenes, but with Banks, she has more tension higher up. So on this side, her right side, which is dominant. Are you right-handed? Yep. So she has the tension more here. On the other side of the neck, her tension shows up a little more anterior neck, up in the scalenes. So I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm not pinching. I'm just applying pressure into the scalene on the other side, taking my thumb to a point where I feel the body doesn't want to let me in any further. And you can also feel for a twitch or a movement in the tissue. If it starts to kind of shake a little, then you're at a place of resistance that is optimal. Doing any trigger points in the scalenes is going to feel uncomfortable. You want to stay at a place where there isn't a lot of resistance showing up in the body. What I mean is, when you're doing trigger point therapy, you can notice other body cues happening, like the feet will move or the hands will clench if it's too much. Banks is very athletic, and so she has a good relationship with that sort of good pain feeling. And so I can tell when it gets intense, she will initiate a breath. And that's really what you want from your client. You want them to be in a place where they're okay going past effleurage. They're okay going a little past petrissage, to the point of working into that muscle memory and making changes. You're going to notice with trigger point, when you hold a point, you will see the blood sort of circulate to that area. You will notice the skin and tissue get rosy, which is good. It's a sign that there's change there. So I'm noticing her shoulders have dropped a little bit since we started. She has more space between her earlobes and her trapezius, so we're getting a little more length in the neck as we're working. And just noticing the rotation of the shoulders and the chest. So I'll have you turn your hands towards the sky, creating a really nice passive stretch for the pecs and shoulders. This is a really great way to tell the body that this is time to relax and open up the chest. Maybe noticing the breath get a little deeper, expanding through the rib cage and up into the shoulders, noticing the length of the neck may feel slightly different than when we began. And after about 15 to 20 minutes of trigger point therapy, it's good to give your client a break. And maybe that means a minute or two working through the scalp. And as you do more trigger point, you're going to start to notice more trigger points popping up. Even as I'm working in her scalp, I can feel trigger points around her ears. You are welcome to stop on any point and just hold. And you can gently do a little frictioning, just holding the pads of your fingers against the skin and rolling over the muscles, the structures underneath that tissue in the scalp, allowing those cranial bones to be slightly affected, allowing the ears and the muscles around the ears, eyes, forehead, scalp to just let go. I'm excited to transition into the next portion of this session, where I will work a few of the trigger points in the pec muscles and also address a couple common trigger points in the forearms, which are very related to shoulder tension, neck tension, if you're someone that is working at a desk or on your phone, or you are playing an instrument, anything that involves a lot of hand coordination. This next portion of the session will be very good for you. Very good for carpal tunnel symptoms as well. Tingling in the hands. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next portion of this session. The full series is available now on our sleep and relaxation app, Serene, and also on our Patreon page. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I hope you'll join us again soon.
Many of our subscribers don't see our videos. Make sure that you click the notification bell. And if you haven't already, follow us on social media for tips, tutorials, giveaways, and daily inspiration.